Bernie Haus Show. My name is Bernie. This is my theme. And you're listening to my show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be as you listen in to the Bernie Haus Show as we begin podcast number 2. You know, listening to podcast number 1, one of the things I'm going to try to work on as we move forward is improving my ability at this format. Last week was episode number 1. Today is episode number 2, and although I do have an outline of some topics I'd like to talk about, today is 100% improv. One shot, one take, that's it. Here we go. If the show sucks, well, you get what you pay for, and I don't think I'm charging a damn thing for this so far. So, again, one of those things I took out of this first show was I say the word and quite a bit. And I'm not sure if is any better than or any other type of delay someone might use as they search for the right word or where they want to go next in a conversation. But I can definitely say one of the things I am going to try to work on during this podcast and moving forward, I said and moving forward, not will be to take out those andas. It's always been one of my pet peeves when I watch sports. Check it out. They always come back with, and we're back. What were you continuing this sentence? How do you start a sentence with and? So kind of a pet peeve. I'll try to work on not saying those things as we move forward. So last episode, the first episode, I talked about being on a reality Swedish television show. And this show was called Allt för Sverige, and it's a show where you basically go over to Sweden and you learn about your ancestry. It's an excellent show. It's produced extremely well. And here's the theme song. You know, as I record this podcast, we're already at episode number 2, and episode number 3 is coming out tomorrow. And you may ask, well, you're a little day late and a dollar short. And not really. I've kind of had it thought out what I was going to do, and I didn't want to do a podcast for each specific episode. I want to keep these podcasts at around 20 some odd minutes long, and therefore I wanted to combine episode number 1 and episode number 2 into this podcast as we move forward. So as you just heard right there, the intro for Allt för Sverige, typically that would be followed with cartoon characters holding up their special prize, whatever you want to say, their special purpose item that means something to them that they brought with them to Sweden for whatever reason this season. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. If you take a look at this show, the cinematography, the audio is out of this world. It's first class, top class, whatever you want to say. So one of those things when you first talk about going to Sweden is the language. I did a little bit of research. There are 10 plus million people that live in Sweden. And worldwide, there's just over 9 million people that speak the language. Now think about that. The entire world, globally, 9 million people speak Swedish. The country has 10 million plus people that live there. It's a difficult language. They use little dots over letters, like the umlaut, make the words have different sounds, right? So you've heard about Swedish meatballs. I want to play something for you that I actually recorded today. How would you ever anticipate the word meatball would be in Swedish? Now, I want you to imagine, think about it, and I guarantee you're not even going to be even close. I think I wrote down how to spell it because there's no way I could have ever been able to phonetically figure this out, and that's for another podcast because I used to be hooked on phonics and went to rehab and think we're out of that. Here's how you say meatball in Swedish?
Köttbulle.
Okay, did you catch that?
Köttbulle. Köttbulle. Köttbulle.
Shitbulla. Now, that's spelled K-O with 2 dots, T-T-B-U-L-L-E. K-O-T-T-B-U-L-L-E.
Köttbulle.
I rest my case when it comes to trying to figure out the Swedish language. So I figured I'd do something in my own native language, and I tried to do a quick little parody. I've done a lot of parodies in my life. I've done some theme songs. I've written a few jingles, and today I thought what I would do is do a parody for when we were going over to begin this journey. Just sit right back and listen close to what I have to say as 10 Americans set off to Sverige. We went across from Denmark, a short trip to Malmo. We ran into the flowers, the maintenance guy had a cow. Oh, he had a cow. We were shortly off to Karlstad for a camping trip. We hadn't even met our Swedish relatives yet. Our Swedish relatives yet. All right, so that's not my best work, but I said that this was improv, and that part's a lie. There's less than 15, 20 minutes at max putting that together. And, it's not my best work, but it works in a pinch because what it does is it describes the way we started it off. And you've watched the show. If you haven't, you probably don't give a shit. But if you have, then you understand we got on a boat, we went across some water, we got on a train, we went to a place, we spent the night, we went camping, we danced around a little coffer, treasure chest. The dancing was not my favorite part. I think I've danced a few times, most of them daddy dances. Since my wedding. I'm not a big fan of dancing. Thankfully, we had Bubba along with us who did a fantastic job of choreographing everything. We went camping, and camping was a lot of fun. Now, as a kid, I went camping with my grandparents because camping with my grandparents was fun. Now, camping with my parents, on the other hand, wasn't exactly fun. But with my grandparents, it was a lot of fun. And they belonged to the Lutheran church. They were very much involved in the Lutheran church and the Swedish history. I remember doing gunny sack races and sleeping in the pop-up tent trailer. So it was a really cool experience to be able to go camping. It was the first opportunity for all of us to really bond. John and Sally at that point in time were off doing their own special day filming, which, again, by the time you hear this, everything's already been on. Brittany, Erica, Sharon, Bubba, Nikki, Trevor, Melody, and myself, we all stayed in this campground, which was freaking huge. They split us up into some groups, filmed us. It's amazing when you look back and you take a look at this and you say, wow, what made it to the final cut? What didn't make it? Who did they focus on? Who didn't they focus on? Going in, I knew, or I pretty much felt that I would be one of the older people on the show. And I was the oldest male by quite a bit. You know, when I look back, I kind of think, holy cow. When I was graduating high school, these guys were like in 3 years old, 5 years old, right? So it was definitely a generation gap, which was cool because it gives you that opportunity to kind of learn from these other people and see the world through their eyes. And there was another lady on the show that was a little bit older than myself, Sharon, and her and I really kind of bonded. And I think right off the bat, Sharon and I realized that we're all playing a role. And the role that we're playing, Sharon and I specifically, was of the older female and the older male, which I think we both embraced and we tried to do to the best of our abilities as we were going to be on this show. And I think both of us enjoyed ourselves to the most. On that first episode, we had the opportunity to meet our relatives for the first time. Now, we were told we only had a brief moment, 2 minutes to be exact, and we ran in. It was wonderful. I met this gentleman, and he must have had to repeat his name 7 times before I could figure out what he said, because I'd never heard the word Matthias in my life. But his name was Matthias, and I'm not going to give away too much because it's not my place to talk about him. I'll say that in the 2 minutes that we had, we discussed my past, his present, the ways that they relate. He let me know that he actually didn't know about my relatives and the way that we fit in. So it was one of those encouraging things going, wow, this is a nice motivational factor going forward, saying, let's give it our all and see what we can make happen. Now, aside from meeting our relatives, of course, we were going to have to find out our teams. Sharon, John, and Nikki, and Sally, and Melody were on the yellow team. Oh, shit. This brings up a really good point. When I was over there, me and Names, we didn't get along very well. Because it was John, Sharon, Bubba, Nikki, and Sally that were all on the yellow team. Now, I would be a liar if I didn't tell you now I'm reading this, because if I didn't, I would probably screw it up once again. And then myself with Erica and Trevor and Melody, we were on the blue team. They gave us our T-shirts. We prepared for our first duel. And that first duel, as you saw on television, I was excited about it because I didn't have to worry about the puzzle. And I wasn't, if I can't get a name, what the hell you think I'm going to do with the puzzle? So we had our teams, I believe, we went second. The blue team went second. The yellow team went first. My mind is like a steel trap, just a little bit rusty, because I smelled way too much WD-40. God, that shit smells good. So as you saw, those guys did really well. Didn't do much justice to us. I think we did a fantastic job. One of the funny things, everybody in my family said, how come you were so nice to those people and encouraging? And they all said I would have been yelling at them. And they're probably right. I probably would have been yelling, hey, let's go hell moving. Let's go fast, blah, blah, blah. But that wasn't going to get me anywhere. So we finished up that episode, and last week was episode number 2. Episode number 2 has been, quote unquote, the fucking worst show ever on SVT, or the worst Alfresferia. And the reason that people have been upset about this episode specifically has had to do nothing but because they thought this show was all about religion. And Sweden is a non-secular country. They are primarily atheist. There were times where everybody I was around that was on the film crew was all non-believers. Those were called good days. It was bizarre at my own standpoint as an atheist that I found myself going, my God, this is a non-secular country. How come we are focusing so much on religion? But then you always have to remember, follow the money, who's making the show, and if there's any other, interest. And again, you're a participant. You do what you're told, you go where you're told, you do what you do. So we were split up into 2 different groups. Not long after we met our relatives, we had the other coffer ceremony. Very emotional and touching, seeing Bubba. Again, the show is done wonderfully, and they did a fantastic job describing or telling Bubba's story. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to spend time with Bubba, meet Bubba, and he is a fantastic young man. So our two groups going forward, we had one group going over to a pastor's house and another group going over to a church camp. I went in with a very open mind, and because all I did was watch the other people's experience at the pastor's house, I'll just talk about what the experience was like for myself. And actually, who was there with myself was Sally, Nikki, Sharon, Bubba, and Trevor. We were over at the church camp. So we went to the church camp in the morning, and I believe that Sharon was whisked off fairly early for her special day. Later on that day, Bubba was whisked off for his special day. And I don't believe I gave anything away because everybody gets whisked off for a special day. So there's no spoilers there. As I go forward, I realize I should slow down so I don't give any spoilers out. Church camp. One of the first things they did was throw us these clothes. Now, my daughters weigh about 104 pounds, 109 pounds, 98, something like that. Very, very small. And I do believe the shirt they put me in would have fit them a wee bit snug. So they threw it on me, and I wasn't exactly happy. And after looking at myself on TV, I realized that I look like Jonathan Lithgow in The World According to Garp. I'm like 7'10", and everybody else is 4'2". I'm 8 foot taller than everybody there. So it was, it is what it is, but it was actually kind of funny. So if you don't know who Jonathan Lithgow was, Google it with The World According to Garp. Google it, because Google can tell you everything you need. Well, we did a few different stunts. We did, they showed on TV the cabins. I personally didn't see anything wrong with them. Although my height was another disadvantage because I hit my head and really cut the top of my head. You know, there was a time when my father was had cancer, I shaved my head and I realized I'm like Moby Dick. I've got scars all over my freaking head from hitting things, from not paying attention at my height, right? So I didn't really have a problem with the accommodations. And some things that I wish would have been on television were, in the morning, Sharon and I sitting on the swing set and having really meaningful conversations. And those are some of the takeaways that personally I cherish the most from the show. Those intimate conversations one-on-one when no one else was around. No other contestants were around. It was just two people chatting, rapping, talking about life, what mattered to them. Those are real special moments that you can never get back. And Sharon and I on that swing set talking and kind of feeling like we were 6-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids on a playground in elementary school, just going back and forth swinging, chatting. It was a lot of fun and something I'll never forget. Something else they didn't show was Sharon and myself. We were the only people up in the morning making breakfast. And so we made breakfast for everybody. And in my case specifically, I made coffee. And I do believe that Sharon helped make pancakes. Now, I could be wrong, but I do believe she helped make pancakes. So that was a lot of fun. The church camp, again, it caused a lot of controversy because of the religious aspects. Yes, the entire freaking episode focused around religion. No two ways about it. But, they wanted to say a story. They told a story. And if you don't like it, change the fucking channel. So that's all I have to say about religion, because I really don't care what you believe. I don't condemn someone because they're a Christian, because they're a Jehovah's Witness, because they're a Jew. I've been trying to think about some different types of comedy acts revolving around religion that I'll go into later. And anybody, if they want to donate, we'll talk about that another time. Concluding the episode was the final duel between the blue team. So my team that I was on with Erica, with Trevor, with Melody, with Brittany and myself. The blue team, we were given very precise instructions of what to do. We had these crosses that were put out on these buoys. We had this paddleboard. We're given the instructions. We're then put into a little room to sit and wait to see who goes first, who goes second, what have you. They do a couple of interviews with us. By the way, over in Sweden, the interviews are called a sync. Okay? Again, keep in mind,
Köttbulle.
that's how you say meatball. So, you know how you say interview? You say sink. So I guess you could have a shipbulle sink. A meatball interview. But in English, a shipbulle sink sounds like something you'd call Roto-Rooter for. To wash your troubles down the drain. This was the very first individual challenge. Every one of us thought one of us was going home. Someone from the blue team is going to be on that big old jet airliner heading west. I had to make sure I get my directions correct. So we're given the instructions. We now have to wait. I've got a iWatch on, and it gives me an alert that my heart is at 155 beats per minute. Now, keep in mind, my resting heart rate's around 62, 63 beats per minute. So 155, that's really pumping. And I was nervous, right? I kept thinking, oh, man, freaking alligator mouth, hummingbird ass, sitting there saying, oh, I'm the first person, this, that, and the other. I'm wearing my Marine Corps shirt. Look at me. God, I'm going to be the first person kicked off this damn thing. I've never been on a paddleboard. I've barely looked at a paddleboard. I've had 6 knee surgeries in my life. There's no way I can kneel on a paddleboard. Luckily, some of the other contestants gave some pointers out. Bubba was awesome. Kind of right now, just thinking about it, telling me to just pull straight back on the paddleboard. And that'll keep you going straight. Well, I put on my lucky flamingo shorts and find out I'll be going last. Now, production, they're going to see it different, what have you. So I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and my heart rate goes from 155 to 145, so I guess I'm really calming down and doing a good job. My wife, who used to teach yoga at the college here, thinking, God, I guess I didn't learn much, did I? So my time comes. I go down there, and Anders is there. Now, if you watch the show, you can take a look in that background. The sky is ominous. The sky is angry, my friends. And I'm telling you, the lightning is really going on. Now, I look over at Anders, and I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I go last. I'm the only atheist on the show. And there's lightning everywhere, and we're going in the water. So the atheist in the water, I go, great. You're going to turn this into an episode where, and yeah, the only person who didn't believe in God is ending up dead. So I'm like, holy cow. And then I find out that they took the fins off from the paddleboard. Now, the fins are there to help control you when you're on a paddleboard. I've never been on a paddleboard. I can use all the help I can get. The fins are gone. 3 or chlorofladiagol or something like that, right? Which I think means on your mark, get set, go. And I run out, bam, Baywatching into that water. And I'm like, oh, before I hit that water, I'm thinking to myself, I think of a paddleboard. The thing it reminds me of is that movie Deliverance, right? You know, and that wasn't exactly something that worked out well. And so I start off paddling, thinking, hey, I might have this after all. Nice and calm. Trying to pick up the crosses.
Now let's you just drop them pants. Metaphor. I bet you can squeal. I bet you can squeal like a pig. Oh, we'll squeal. Squeal now. Squeal. Squeal. Squeal louder. Louder.
Next thing you do, you hear me out there on that paddleboard, whee, paddling that thing, whee, trying to get around those crosses, picking those crosses up, throwing them over my head. Well, I inadvertently cut my nose picking up one of them crosses. And I was bleeding really, really well. So I come running out of the water. I've got all these crosses around me. And of course, being a kid growing up in the 80s, I use an 80s reference and I go, I'm like the religious Mr. T. I pity the fool. Because I've got all these crosses. Mr. T had all the jewelry. So I run over there and I've got the blood coming up. And they do an interview right off the bat. And I'm like, oh man, this would be such a good, thing to show. Next thing you do, they show me with a little Band-Aid on my nose. And we find out, there's Ananda, but we find out that that no one's going to get cut. And that's the way the episode ends. So that's the way we're going to end this episode of the Bernie Haus Show. Because Bernie went long. We're at 27 minutes when I started the theme to end it. So forgive me, fast forward through the parts that suck. Oh, God, that means you didn't listen to anything. Well, we're going to try to work better. We're going to try to get better. And I hope you enjoyed the show. And remember...
Köttbulle, 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 köttbulle.
Goodbye from Bernie!